Hi, my name is Beth and welcome to my 2025 reading journal setup. I am very excited to finally share my 2025 reading journal with you. This year, I've decided to jump on the reading journal bandwagon and try out a square notebook from Archer and Olive. I actually purchased this journal in 2023 when Archer and Olive had an incredible end of summer sale, so this notebook has been patiently waiting on my shelves for almost 2 years. I've never used any notebook size other than a B5 before, so there's definitely going to be some learning required, but I'm excited to see how I like this new size. The first thing I'm doing is removing the pen loop. All Archer and Olive journals come with pen loops, but I don't like how they look and I don't use them. This one was really well secured, so it took some force, but I was able to pull it out. And other than a bit of a gap at the back, it doesn't affect the integrity of the journal. But with that out of the way, we can officially get started on my setup. I'm starting with my name page. I don't spend a lot of time on the name page because it's not a page I ever really look at, so I'm just adding my name and a couple of B's to this page. Last year, I used a gothic theme for my reading journal. I wanted something dark, but not dark academia. While I really liked the theme at the beginning, it felt a bit depressing after a while. So this year, I've decided to go in a completely different direction, and I went for a B theme. I've been sitting on this theme for a few months now, and I'm really excited that it's finally coming together. Part of why this video has taken so long for me to make is because I ordered bee-themed stationery from an Etsy seller back in November to use in this setup, but then the postal workers here in Canada went on strike until the week before Christmas, and I still haven't received my order yet. I waited as long as possible before starting, but I inevitably decided to change some of my designs to accommodate for not having the stationery I ordered. It's not the end of the world because while I don't carry the theme throughout the entire journal, I will use it again at the end of the year when I set up my stats, so I'll be able to use them then. Another reason why this video has taken a little longer is because I've been troubleshooting a new filming location. If you watched my last video, you'll notice that it was at a new table. I bought myself some lights for Christmas so that I could film at night and not rely on the sun for lighting, but I've been finding it really challenging to figure out. So there are some weird lighting shifts in this video and I apologize for that. But going back to the journal, I have a quote page on the left-hand side. I've attached this big picture of a bee on a flower that I found on Pinterest and added the quote, "Life is too short to read a bad book," which is from James Joyce. I was trying to find a quote from an author that I've read from, but nothing was standing out to me, so I went with this one because it is so true. Good books only in 2025. The other side is my 2025 cover page. I found this design on Pinterest and it was created by Magical Bujo. I saw this and thought it was absolutely perfect for the vibe I was going for. But I knew that if I tried to hand draw it into my journal, it was not going to look nearly as nice as hers, so I made a digital copy of it on Adobe Fresco and printed it out on printer paper. I cut around it, leaving a white border so it kind of looks like a sticker, and just pasted it onto the two corners. I added a piece of paper in the center that says reading and stamped 2025 and journal to complete the title, and that is it for my cover page. Next up is my table of contents. In previous years, I have called this spread the index, mostly because everyone else calls it an index, but I have come to appreciate that this is not actually an index, and so from here on out, it will officially be known as a table of contents. But for this spread, I'm starting with gluing down some decorative paper on the side. That yellow paper that I'm using on the bottom really triggered the lighting to change and go all blue. I'm not sure if there's a way to prevent that, but it is what it is. I used inspiration for this spread from Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride. Because I'm not used to this size of journal, I didn't know what the best way to lay out the lines would be. I ended up using the same design she uses, which is 3 columns, which I drew in with my LePen marker in 0.5 millimeters. I will not need this much space, but it's better than not having enough, I guess. I added a picture of some daisies on the left-hand side and framed it with some washi tape and pictures of bees. All the washi tape I'm using is from Hobby Lobby, and the bees are just pictures I found on Google and printed off. I also used a Crayola Supertip to highlight every other line in the boxes. In hindsight, I wish that I had used a lighter color, but it's not the end of the world. On the next spread is my Days Read tracker. This was the first spread where I found the square size to be a real challenge. I'm used to having lots of vertical space in a B5 journal, so I had a lot more decoration planned for this spread that I wasn't able to include because there just wasn't enough space. I was able to make the whole chart fit, but I had to do a lot of reconfigurations to make it work. I started by layering some paper at the top of the page. You'll notice that I stick to the same few paper designs throughout this setup, but the old book page combined with the green lined paper and the blank yellow paper was definitely my favorite combo. The chart that I've created to track my days read is similar to a year in pixels spread, where each box is 2x1 dots. I have the days along the left side and the month letters at the top. If I read a book on a particular day, I will color in the box. If I don't, I'll leave it blank. I used to do monthly calendars to track my days read, but I much prefer having the whole year laid out on one spread. The next page is my 2025 reading goal. Some people call this their Goodreads challenge, but I just keep it simple as my overall goal for the year. My reading goal this year is once again 45 books. This is the same number I was going for last year. I did manage to surpass 45 books in 2024, but I feel like I only did it because of school. 40 to 45 books is a much more realistic range than 50 or higher for me. 45 is still a challenge, but it's definitely doable. In the past, I've always represented my goal with little boxes, but this year I leaned into the theme and made little honeycombs. I was definitely inspired by Katie Coulson, who has done a similar spread in her reading journals. I originally attempted to draw the honeycombs in by hand, but it turns out that hexagons are not easy to draw. So I ended up creating a stencil with some paper and used that to trace the shapes. So none of the honeycombs are exactly the same size, but it's harder to see the inconsistencies with all of them together on the page. I also have a little section at the bottom where I can add the date that I complete my goal. Because I don't continue coloring in any boxes after my goal, I like to know when in the year I completed this challenge. I also decided to add a little bee trail line across both of these pages. I felt like they were missing something, so I thought this would be a cute little addition. The pages will definitely start to look more filled in when I actually start reading and completing books, but for now, this page is complete. Next up is my TBR spread. I have decided to really change up my TBR this year. Last year, my TBR had 22 books on it, and I did not come close to completing it. I think I ended up reading 10 of the books I set out to read. I also shot myself in the foot with my TBR because of my reading resolutions. Last year, I wanted to read translated books, do some rereading, and read 2 Stephen King books, but I didn't have any books on my TBR that reflected any of those goals. So I've decided to be a little smarter with my TBR, starting with reducing the number down to 12 books. I was initially trying for 10, but I allowed myself to have 2 more. And even though the number is a lot smaller, there's a great selection of options here. There's fantasy, science fiction, horror, contemporary, nonfiction, new releases, first books in series, sequels, authors of color. The last 6 books are all new selections for me, but the first ones are repeat offenders from 2024, including The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, which is making its 4th consecutive appearance on my TBR. It was my number 1 priority read of last year, and I didn't read it. To be completely honest, I'm incredibly intimidated by The Wheel of Time. I don't read a lot of series, so a 14-book series is terribly daunting for me. But 2025 is the year the Eye of the World is going to happen. I've been putting it off for way too long, so it needs to be read this year. I like to build my TBRs around books I already own, that way there isn't really an excuse for not reading them. The only book that I don't currently own is The Listeners by Maggie Stiefvater, and it's because it doesn't come out until June. But I'm really looking forward to all of these, and I think for once, they're all manageable for 1 year. And on the subject of series, the other page is my series tracker. I only dedicate one page to my series tracker because I don't read enough series to justify more than that. Currently, I'm reading 5 series: A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin, the Dune series by Frank Herbert, All for the Game by Nora Sakavic, the Beartown series by Frederick Bachman, and the Harry Potter series. Last year, I started with 3 series and ended up with 7. The way that I've laid this spread out allows for me to add up to 5 new series, which should be plenty of room. And I definitely won't be completing all of these this year. With A Song of Ice and Fire and Dune, I like to read them 1 book a year. Last year, I failed to read from either series, so technically I'm a book behind for both, but at the rate Winds of Winter is going, I think I've still got plenty of time. I will absolutely be finishing the Beartown series though, because I only have 1 book left, but we'll have to see about the other 2 as the year goes on. I'm coloring in the boxes for the books I've already read and crossing them out with some black lines to show that they were completed prior to 2025. I printed off a honeycomb design from Google and laid it out to look a little bit like washi tape. I put that on the top and the bottom of both spreads and added some lines to distinguish them, but that is those spreads completed. The next page is my bookshelfie spread. Last year, I kept my bookshelf within the Gothic theme by drawing a Victorian-style bookcase. I wanted to keep that up this year, but I was having a really difficult time coming up with any ideas. I tried using honeycomb, but it didn't look very nice and it didn't really work with drawing book spines in. And looking for inspiration was challenging because nothing came up when I googled bee bookcase, as was kind of expected. But just when I was about to give up hope, I found a drawing of a beehive and inspiration struck. So similarly to my cover page, I made a digital drawing of a beehive on a branch with a large arch in the middle of it to be my bookcase. My design originally had leaves on the branch, but after I decided to use the design from Magical Bujo, I changed the leaves into daisies to match that design. Overall, I'm really happy with how it came out. I think it looks really cool. The only thing I'm a bit nervous about is that I managed to fit exactly 45 books onto the shelves, and there is no room for any more. On top of that, the book spines are really small, so I'm going to have to write really tiny to fit all the titles in. While I do think this design would have worked a little better if I'd had a smaller reading goal, I'm still really happy with how it looks, and I'm excited to fill it in. I color my book spines based on the format I read the book in. Some people do genres or star ratings, but I don't track book format anywhere else in my journal, so this works for me. And other people who track by book format will typically use 3 colors, 1 for physical books, 1 for audiobooks, and 1 for ebooks, but I use 5 to accommodate for tandem reading. I do a lot of tandem reading, so I figured that they deserved their own colors. I've added my key to the left-hand side of the page to identify which color is associated with which format, and then I felt like this spread was looking very empty, so I took a few more bees and glued them in various places to fill the space. I also added some more of the bee trail lines, but that is it for the bookshelf spread. Next up is my alphabet challenge. I don't normally have reading challenges in my journal, but the alphabet challenge is one I like because I don't put too much pressure on myself to complete it. I've been including this challenge in my journal for a few years now, but last year was the first time I also included authors, and I really liked having both challenges. I did really well with the author side, and while I didn't do as well on the book titles, I still managed to complete over half. I'm pretty strict with my book titles. I don't count books that start with articles such as the or a. The book has to start with that letter or else I don't include it. And because I'm a bit picky, I never put a lot of stress on myself to actually finish this challenge. I have never finished it any year that I've done it, but at the same time, I'm not exactly striving to complete it. If I happen to read something with a new letter, that's great, and if not, that's fine too. I used my alphabet letter stamps that I got from Amazon to stamp all the letters in. I really like how clean this looks. I also used a washi tape from Ikigai Papier in the top left corner. It's the only washi tape in this setup that isn't from Hobby Lobby. Because the title for this spread is only 2 words long, I felt like the header was looking a little bare, so I added a B to the left side and some of those rectangle pictures to the right. I also layered 2 washi tapes along the bottom to finish this spread off. The next spread is my 2025 book club reads. I'm in a little book club with a couple of my friends, and we read books together every year. Last year, we read 7 books, which is not our best year, but not our worst. I definitely take blame for us only reading 7 books. My schooling completely got in the way of what I could read and when, but while I'm still in my master's program, I have fewer overall novels to read this semester, so hopefully that means we can try and conquer more than 7 books. Right now, we're reading the Harry Potter series. We only managed to finish the first one last year, so we have the rest of the series to go. This page is going to remain pretty empty because I only update it at the end of the year. We don't have a strict 1 book per month deadline because sometimes our schedules get busy or we read pretty long books. So I don't want to leave either too much space or not enough space, so I won't touch this spread until the end of 2025. But the next page is one I will be setting up throughout the year, and it's my books hauled spread. Last year, I did really well with being conscious of my book hauling. I gave myself 2 full pages of space to add books to, but I didn't even fill up the first page, which I'm really proud of. I'm hoping that I keep that energy up in 2025, so even though I've drawn in 2 charts, there are fewer lines than there were last year. I use my library pretty often, especially for audiobooks, because they can get really expensive. I canceled my Audible subscription a couple years ago and just decided to use the library instead. Yes, sometimes you have to wait a while for the book you want, but I have saved so much money. I've also reduced the information on this page. Previously, I would also include the author name, but I decided to forego that because I just didn't have enough space. The book title is more important anyway, so I just have that as well as space to include the date I acquired the book. I include books I purchase and books that are gifted to me in this spread. I don't include the cost because I really don't want to know how much I'm spending on books, but regardless of how I obtain them and at whatever cost, I add all the books I obtain here. And with that, we can move on to the final spread. The very last page I'll be setting up is my resolutions spread. I used to call this my goals page, but I liked the idea of giving it an independent title that is separate from my number goal. This year, I have 5 reading goals. You'll see that I originally only had 4 written down, but after I finished up the page, I remembered 1 more that I wanted to add. Some of my goals are repeat goals, but I do have a few new ones as well. The first one is that I want to read more science fiction this year. Sci-fi is a genre that I enjoy, but it's never a genre that I pick up. I don't have anything against sci-fi, so I want to dedicate some time to it in 2025. I'm not putting a number on this goal because I want to look back on it at the end of the year and decide whether or not I think I deserve to say that I completed the goal. If I put a number on it, I fear that I'll only read to that goal and then not read any more for the rest of the year. This is a goal I want to work on throughout the whole year, so I'm leaving the number ambiguous. The next goal is to finish 3 series. I always have a series goal on my resolutions to encourage me to pick them up. I have failed this goal for the last 2 years, but I'm feeling good about 2025, so fingers crossed. Goal number 3 is also a repeat goal, and it's to read 2 Stephen King books. I like Stephen King, but I'm not always in the mood to read his stuff. So in my effort to get through his never-ending bibliography, I challenge myself to finish at least 2 of his books every year. Again, I have failed this goal the last 2 years, but I'm going to try my best. The next one is to read from 5 new countries. I've been working on my Read Around the World challenge since 2023, and I want to make sure that I keep adding new countries to the list. I added 6 in 2024, but I noticed that most of my reads were from the same few places, so it'll be good to keep myself on track with this challenge. This is the only resolution I added check-off boxes to. I originally did it to fill in more space because I thought this was going to be my last resolution, but I ended up adding a 5th one, which is to read 1 Western novel. I have never read a single Western in my life, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone online talk about Westerns. I know nothing about the genre, but I feel like it could be fun to try it out this year. I don't want to delve into the genre as much as I want to with sci-fi, but I think it would be interesting to try it out. The closest I've ever come to reading a Western was a book called Rocky Mountain Cowboy Christmas, but the main man in that book was literally a firefighter and not a cowboy, so it barely counts. Not that I really expect anyone to have any, but if anyone knows of any good Westerns, please let me know. The only other thing I'm adding is a picture of a bee on the right-hand side. I didn't have anything else in mind to put on that page, so I just added a picture to make it look aesthetic. But with that, the setup is complete and we can go through the final flip through. This is my 2025 reading journal, and I feel like I say this every year, but I think this is my favorite journal that I've set up so far. So many of my reading journal setups have been blue, and so I've been trying to escape blue for the last couple years. I tried to do it last year with the Gothic theme, but I ended up feeling sad with the complete lack of color, so this feels like a happy medium. Yes, the journal itself is blue, but it was a mystery pick, so I can't be too mad about it. I'm really happy with the fun, creative liberty I've taken with this journal. I definitely had to warm up to the new journal size, but I think I made it work in the end. I'm not really sure how my review spreads are gonna go. Right now, I'm planning on setting them up in a similar way to how I have in the last couple years, but I won't know until I start. Hopefully, the designs will translate well into a square size, but the first few months might have a lot of experimentation in them. I'm really excited about sharing my 2025 reading journey with all of you. If you're looking for more reading journal content, I created spreads for every month in 2024, so I'll leave my 2024 reading journal playlist down below if you're interested in checking that out. I'm really interested in what you're planning to read in 2025. Please leave your recommendations down below. I'd love to hear some new reading ideas. I will see you all again at the beginning of February for my first 2025 reading wrap-up. But until then, thank you very much for watching and have a great rest of your day.